Climate is the existential crisis facing our society. And from a Fianna Fáil perspective, we need to continue the transformation that the outgoing government, to be fair, has initiated and developed through legislation and so forth. So the offshore wind revolution is upon us. And we would really drive forward on that front. We would appoint a Minister of State for Energy to make sure we can reach our targets by 2030 in terms of offshore wind and onshore wind as well, and solar energy and solar panels. And great progress has been made on that front. Big investments in public transport, more incentives for the use of EVs, the commitment we've already given in terms of retrofitting, but expanding that, making it more affordable for families to afford retrofitting, increase the grants to bring about a downward trend in emissions there. To deal with food security, which is very important, and reconcile that challenge with climate security into the future, working with farmers to get emissions down, which is also important. So we acknowledge, we know it's the big issue facing all of us, and we need a full-on effort to address the climate challenge.
Climate change is one of the single biggest issues facing not just Ireland, but the world internationally. While in many cases people are feeling the pressure of cost of living, of high cost of housing or healthcare, ultimately we also have to prioritise addressing carbon emissions. Sinn Féin's fully committed to meeting our 2030 and 2050 climate change commitments, and we can do that by greater investment in renewable energy, public transport and reducing embodied carbon in the built environment. Only a government led by Sinn Féin will do that in a way that is fair and just. We don't support eco-austerity, we support the just transition to a low-carbon economy and a low-carbon future.
There's no denying the world is on fire. The climate emergency is real and it requires drastic action. That's why Fine Gael and government were the first party to bring in a climate action bill. That's why we're committed to halving our greenhouse emissions by 2030 and going carbon neutral by 2050. We want to go into a deep dive to make sure that we retrofit even more homes, but also we want to bring communities along with us. There's no point talking down to people about the climate. It's about supporting them, putting the funding in place and putting the programmes in place to make sure we hit our climate targets. There's no time to wait on this.
The climate catastrophe is the biggest challenge facing humanity. I'm deeply concerned that it hasn't featured much in this election. It's ironic that the European Union, which talks about the new Green Deal, has instead taken billions of euros out of the environmental and climate budget and instead is spending that on defence, even though the military carbon footprint is not calculated anywhere, although its damage is more than aviation and shipping combined. We need to elevate the climate discussion into real action. We need degrowth, we need sensible policies that allow a just transition for people to make the change. But make the change we must, because climate and wars are the biggest drives of uncertainty and migration, and they're having a devastating consequence on the planet.
The government is missing its climate targets, failing dramatically to bring down fossil fuels. We need to radically invest in supporting people, working people to invest in retrofitting their homes. That will make their homes warmer, make their energy bills cheaper. We also need to radically invest in the efficient delivery of public transport. So many people are complaining that they can't actually get the bus to work because they can't rely on it. We need to bring down the cost of public transport to make it more attractive for people. We need to radically invest in safer walking and cycling infrastructure to make that more attractive so people who can leave the car at home do leave the car at home. And we need to radically scale up our investment in offshore wind and renewable energy.
We are in a really desperate climate, biodiversity, ecological crisis. Despite the kind of words trying to tell you that things are going to be okay, we're moving in the right direction, that is simply not true. If you take Ireland, we are on track to miss by a country mile our legally agreed climate targets, even though those climate targets are on the low end of really what we should be achieving. The Greens have utterly failed, unfortunately, in government. They betrayed the movement by agreeing to designate LNG, fossil fuel infrastructure, as strategic. We need a fundamentally different and eco-socialist direction. We need climate action that is just, that improves people's lives, that makes people's lives easier. What that looks like is retrofitting of people's homes. We should be retrofitting every single social house and AHB house in the state by 2030. We're currently on track to do that over about 25 or 30 years. We have legislation to ensure that private residential property would be retrofitted up to a B2 standard. We say massively expanded and free public transport to get people out of cars, into active travel, into public transport, and then tackle the real polluters. A ban on private jets, no more data centres, and a ban on future fossil fuel infrastructure, including any form of LNG.
Between 1990 and 2022, Ireland reduced its emissions by 1%. In 2023, Ireland reduced its emissions by almost 7%. And in the first quarter of 2024, Ireland's electricity emissions fell by almost 17%. We actually made change here. We moved Ireland on this topic, and we're going to continue to do so in the future.
In the area of climate, the Social Democrats believe in a rooftop revolution, ensuring that we have solar panels on every house the length and breadth of the country, providing those affordable solar panels to low-income houses for free. We believe in retrofitting and providing a 1.5 billion transition fund to aid to ensure that the transition is just for our farmers.